Ibrahim, the Palestinian-American teenager released from an Israeli military prison in late November after more than 9 months in custody without trial. Palestinian-American, you've just come from Florida, where you spent time with him. Jasper Nathaniel, New York-based writer and reporter who covers Israel's occupation of the West Bank on his Substack called Infinite Jazz. And we'll talk about your new piece, Israel's Archaeological Apartheid. That does it for our show. A happy birthday to Yusra Razuki. We have job openings at Democracy Now! For video news production and digital fellowship programs. Go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarland, host of The Conversation with Al McFarland. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. Love Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! And I love this station that enables us to be in community, discussing things that matter locally, globally. And so today, we're going to continue that vein of engaging, sharing, being in community, and we are happy to be with you who are here on KFAI. We want you to be a part of this by joining the conversation. You can join the conversation by simply going to one of the streaming platforms that this program is going to. We're streaming live to YouTube, YouTube for Inside News MN, YouTube for Black Press USA. We're streaming live to X or Twitter and streaming live to Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you're with us on any of those platforms, just shout us out. Drop a note in the comment section. We'll shout you out. If you want to be on the program, let us know. We'll send you a link and bring you into the program. I want to start today's program a little differently because I've collected several stories that are being presented in Insight News, actually stories that we've rewritten for publication today at the Insight News website at our news site, insightnews.com. The first story is about Brooklyn Center. And the story headline is that Brooklyn Center City Council has fired City Manager Reggie Edwards after a closed-door performance review. This happened on Friday. And the story says that the council voted 3-2 during a tense special meeting Friday night. Supporters of Edwards protested inside City Hall, prompting chants and an early adjournment. Edwards, who has served since 2021 following the police killing of Dante Wright, warned the decision could stall the city's rebuilding efforts. He was the only Black city manager in Minnesota at the time. Officials say operations will continue uninterrupted as they determine interim leadership. And the council has not said who will serve as acting city manager. Another story, Evan Turnage runs for Congress. In Mississippi, attorney and civil rights advocate Evan Turnage has announced a run for Congress. He's challenging long-time incumbent Benny Thompson in the Democratic primary, calling for generational change and renewed focus on economic justice, voting rights, and criminal justice reform. If elected, Turnage would represent Mississippi's 2nd congressional district, the primary expected to be one of the closely watched races in the state when it comes up. Next item, St. Paul. St. Paul has adopted a 2026 budget. The council has approved its 2026 budget after months of public engagement. The plan avoids cuts to fire services, libraries, and parks while continuing funding for neighborhood business corridors. It also includes investments in downtown redevelopment and park improvements. The council also enacted a citywide ban on cryptocurrency kiosks, citing sharp increases in fraud losses, especially among older adults. The virtual kiosk ban took effect December 21st. Finally, in our news roundup, well, I got two more stories. One, a note from Representative Mary Frances Clardy. She was reflecting on transitions in the season. So at the state capitol, State Representative Mary Frances Clardy is marking the holiday season with reflection and transition. She happens to be a school official with the St. Paul Public Schools, and she's also retiring from her long-term role at St. Paul Public Schools while she continues her legislative work. She highlighted in her letter to her constituents major policy changes, including Minnesota's paid family and medical leave program, which launches in a couple of weeks, January 1st. The new law provides up to 20 weeks of combined paid leave. It's funded through shared payroll premium, paid leave for maternity. Clardy represents District 53 in Minnesota's House of Representatives. Our final story in the news roundup is about the Black Press. And, the Black Press USA, which is the website that we're streaming on right now, is urging readers to support Black-owned media, warning that independent journalism is under increasing threat. In a year marked by misinformation and political pressure, publishers say the Black Press remains essential for accountability, historical record, and community voice. They're asking readers to subscribe, donate, and share trusted reporting. So this message comes at a time when newsrooms nationwide are facing severe financial strain. Well, there you have it, several stories, and I'm going to have my panel of friends and colleagues react to these and more. Let me call in our friend, my fellow publisher, first of all, Tom Gitta. He's the owner of Inshali, which is a celebrated and powerful voice for the African community here in Minnesota and actually nationally, internationally. Tom is joining us from Mombasa, Kenya. He's on vacation for the holiday season. Tom, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Al, and thanks for having me, and happy holidays to everyone.
Well, thank you for joining us. So let's start with that question about the Black Press. What is the challenge as you see it? You and I both have been active through our creation of Minnesota Multicultural Media Consortium, through the work we've done in trying to elevate the voice, the presence, the work of ethnic and community media. Where do we stand right now? How does it look for us?
Yeah, actually, Al, I think you alluded to it as you talked about the stories you're doing on the website, on insidenews.com. The Black Press, actually, the larger press is facing challenges nationally, but as you know, the Black Press already, even before these current challenges that we're facing, we're always on a shoestring budget for the most part for many of the Black Press in America. So these challenges are coming at a very serious time. There's been a drying up of advertising that has been going on actually for the last few years, but they are actually being compounded now for some of the Black Press. They used to get, for example, federal advertising. For example, anybody who has been getting federal advertising, the Trump administration has really been cracking down on anything that has any inkling of DEI or whatever they decide to call DEI, which is pretty much everything these days with this administration. So, so the Black Press is actually facing a lot of challenges. There's been the downward trend with advertising, especially for print. But then even with the digital dollars, I always tell people that for most of the small press, which is most of the Black press is small media companies for the most part. Those media companies, I always tell people that for the money that we used to get in print, for example, I always tell people that the equivalent is $1 is 10 cents on the dollar. So if I was getting $10 on a particular ad, right now we are probably getting $1 for that same ad, digital wise. Okay, so that's yeah, so that has serious implications. The other thing that people tend to forget is that unless you're very, very big, there are actually very few, even in the mainstream, that are having a good success at digital. Okay, people need to understand that there are unless you're like the Wall Street Journal, you are the New York Times, monetizing digital dollars, digital advertising dollars is quite a challenge. That's why even people like Google, sometimes get accused of using content from a lot of the media companies, even the small media companies, to really make their ad dollars, on newsgoogle.com. So those are some of the challenges we're facing. The advertising dollars have really hit the revenue streams for a lot of our black press. There's some new upstarts that have been coming up, as you know, with new media, as we call it. But that also that also has its own challenges, actually. So it's not, the dollars are not quite there. The other thing I want to highlight is that people forget is that people keep saying, "Oh, the internet is there for the news," and this and that, but somebody has to collect the news. Okay, somebody has to go collect the news. Somebody has to go to City Hall to get the news. Somebody has to go to an event that is happening. Where there's a black, if there's a major black event going, the black press has to go there and cover it. If it's not, and that takes manpower. The news you're reading on the internet just does not appear there by artificial, by AI. Somebody actually has to go on site somewhere, on location, to bring that news to you, so you can, check it out on Google News.
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland, talking with my friend and colleague, Tom Gata. He's the publisher and editor-in-chief of Mshale, and Tom is joining us live from Mombasa, Kenya. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time. It's late there in the evening, I think, so for staying up for this conversation.
Yes. It's about 10:15 p.m. 10:15
p.m. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
just had dinner with the family.
Well, but this illustrates the power of the shift in capability for us to connect globally. So you and I are thousands of miles and 10 hours apart, right?
Yeah.
And so what is the upside of the shift in capability that is brought about by technology? And when I say that, I'm thinking about the people who look at all the YouTubers, the travel bloggers, look at the creators, and the glamour on the street is that people can monetize their individual live streams and podcasts and the like. Is that really the case, or is that an illusion? And how does that work, either with or against what we call and who we are as traditional media? What are we to do from your point of view?
Yeah, it's a good thing. First of all, the technology, I think, has made things, even for us as news publishers, easier. Okay, so we're able to collect, we're able to connect with sources, for example. Could be verified. Like how you're talking to me now. I'm in Mombasa. You're able to get some input from me by views. Thousands of miles away. So that's a good thing. We can participate civically, using technology. We can, to some extent, I know the fear has been that, hey, who is going to cover City Hall, for example? Who is going to cover, certain proceedings that are going on in the civic arena? And to some extent, the digital can make it possible. I know usually sometimes people are critical that, hey, government provided video is, suspect, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can be critics of the government, but like, for example, I can monitor. If I cannot afford to send a reporter to City Hall for example, to cover, the council meeting for a particular day, we can still access, that material,
The
get the
video,
video.
the records of the minutes.
Yeah, transcribe it, and then if we, the only thing we end up missing sometimes is like if you used to have somebody go cover like the Brooklyn Center or Brooklyn Park City Council meeting, for example, the Minneapolis City Council meeting. If you don't have a reporter, maybe they might not be able to ask one or two questions of the audience members that might be there, but you can always follow that up. Because nowadays if you go to, let's say as an example, Facebook, for example, there are a lot of neighborhood Facebook groups, for example, the North Side, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, and you can kind of get a sense of what people are thinking. If you were writing a story, for example, about last week's city council meeting and we were not there, we can get that video, go through it, and then if we want to follow up with the individuals, we can follow up with them individually. So that's the good part. But that still does not address the issues of monetization. The challenges of keeping the staff paid, because you still this thing always comes down. The news can never be what's the word I'm looking for? It cannot be written by itself. Okay, somebody has to write it. Somebody has to. You can't just make it up. Okay, so somebody needs to be reporting on it,
Yep.
and that is the danger we're facing right now, in my opinion, because we cannot afford the staff that we need to go and cover some of these very important events in our community.
Let me bring another friend of yours and mine and one of our regulars here on the conversation. That's Jonathan Palmer. Jonathan Palmer is working actively in the Rondo neighborhood. And this issue of communicating is one that's dear to you as well, Jonathan. You are a contributor from time to time to Insight News, and I'm sure other community media, but you've been a stakeholder in trying to ensure that there's an ecosystem that brings our voice and our visions forward, at least to us, but also in a way that stands against the disinformation, which we are inundated day in and day out, and that's the fight. And guys, let's look at the Brooklyn Center. Read about Reggie Edwards. I think you both know Reggie Edwards. Do you know Reggie Edwards, Tom? The Brooklyn Center.
Yes, I know. I do know. Yep, I know him very well. We cover him from time to time. So,
were you aware of the story of his termination Friday? You might not be, since you're in Kenya right now.
No, I'm still plugged in. The wonders of technology, as you just alluded to earlier. Yes, I know. That's something we definitely need to. We can talk about after Mr. Palmer here gives his introductory remarks.
Sure, Jonathan, jump in. Just about the topic in general, Jonathan Palmer. But also, if you knew, I don't know if you knew Reggie or not. Did you know Reggie? You're muted, Jonathan.
Yeah. So
yes, thank you. Great to be here. Great to see you, Tom, and great to see you, Al.
Nice to see you, Jonathan.
No, I'd met Reggie only briefly, so I didn't know him well. But this is a very interesting kind of development that came up. So it's wondering, what is this all? What's the whole piece that's behind all of this? Mm-hmm.
Well, the city put out a one-paragraph press release saying that they terminated the contract with them, didn't say why, suggested performance, and said that the city's business would go on. So I did some digging and got a little more information that was summarized in the report I read, but there's a longer story at insightnews.com right now, but using the investigative tools and access that the internet and online can provide. But what's not clear is the why. And here's what I know, and what makes it interesting, that takes into consideration our cultural sensibility and our experience. So the mayor, April Graves, was a black woman, right?
Yes.
And 2 of the 5 city council members, the mayor being one, voted against the decision to terminate Reggie Edwards. Reggie Edwards, a black guy, city manager, and brought in to that position, as we reported, after the death of Dante Wright, the previous city manager, fired. All the details of that I didn't go into, but partly because of the racial tension and climate in Brooklyn Center. And the city's intention was to respond to that, to bring in personnel and lived experience and training and talent in its new city manager, which they brought in Reggie Edwards to do. Dr. Reggie Edwards, stellar and impeccable credentials in public service, public administration, and beyond. And so the hidden question for me, Jonathan and Tom, is what is the racial dilemma? And are we looking at a situation where
I think you froze there.
termination was not appropriate and voted against it? Why did the 3 have? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so you kind of froze there for a few
issues here.
seconds.
I don't know, Jonathan.
Yeah, but I just want to be sure that the audience, the listeners, and the viewers understand. So the council, the Brooklyn Prince City Council, consists of 5 people. Okay, so currently it's 3 white people and 2 black women. Okay. So the 2 that voted against termination were the 2 black council members on the council. Okay, so so people just need to know that's what is going on there.
Well, and I will throw
And
in
it's
here.
gone.
Oh, he'll jump back in. I'll throw in here. I believe that Reggie was the only black city manager in the state of Minnesota.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's a level of significance. And Al referenced the death of Dante Wright. I think it's important to note that that happened during the trial of Derek Chauvin, and it was a police officer who apparently confused her taser with her gun, and instead of drawing her taser, drew her gun and shot and killed Dante Wright, and that exploded within the city. Minnesota has had problems for a number of years with the issue of killing of unarmed black men. We saw, that the Chauvin trial was one that was huge here. And to have another death occur during the middle of that's it drew a lot of attention from that. And so Brooklyn Center has had some very big challenges, and this is a big issue to take a look at and see what exactly is the reason behind this. To be fair, when they don't talk about issues, there's personnel and HR things involved, but my understanding is that there were protests at the council meeting when they against this firing. When you have a split like that, it raises the question, and so this is a big issue to see. We're sliding very quickly back into the world pre-2020, pre-murder of George Floyd. There is an empowerment or entitlement for white men especially going on right now. And they are launching a campaign of, we're going to take back our country, we're going to take back our world, or we're going to take back our place in society, because they feel like they're under attack. And when you look at the historical situations that exist, it seems more like spoiled children than it does some sort of civil rights issue that is arising out of this. So
Yes, yes.
I'm very curious to learn more about what is going on for Reggie.
And so,
Yeah,
what are the
yeah,
implications? I guess, Tom, jump in if you would. Uh,
yeah,
Jonathan is spot on in his analysis of the climate, the shift that we think is reflected in the lunacy coming out of the White House and
yeah.
the current administration. How does that look to you as a player here in Minnesota, Twin Cities, and also close to and representing the immigrant community here, but also now that you're at home in India, how does it
Yeah.
sound to the rest of the world, at least to the world from where you stand right now? In opinions, look at what's
Yeah,
going on here.
yeah. So to me, as just as Jonathan has just said, you really would like to know the why. So the why actually we don't know yet, but from what I know, okay, from what I've been able to gather is that this firing really has nothing to do with performance, at least from what I've been hearing. That he had excellent reviews. Even the latest review that he had was up there. Okay, so this definitely has something to do with the dynamics that are going on, which I think Jonathan has his finger on it. That I will tend to agree with. When they hired him, I think he did exactly what the city needed for
For a
sure.
second, Jonathan, go ahead and jump in again.
Yes. So he did what the city did.
Apologize for the technology. We're praising technology, but we're also experiencing uh,
as long as you can
interruptions.
hear me, that's
You're back, Tom. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So this, me personally, I kind of see this as maybe Reggie was just too successful in what he was doing. Okay. And sometimes, when you become too successful in what you're doing, it means you might also end up rubbing people off the wrong way, people with not necessarily the right interests of the larger community at that, because you have to know that Brooklyn Center is the most diverse city in our state. Okay, majority.
Explain that. Explain that, Tom.
Yes. Yes. So it has a mixture of people. It has immigrants, white people are still there, black people. I mean, basically, we always say that in Brooklyn Center there is no race you will not find represented in substantial numbers. Okay, so it's a very diverse city. So the reaction by these folks, these three folks at the Brooklyn Center City Council is actually running counter to what the residents of that city expect. And I think I think Jonathan mentioned it, that the city hall was packed when they were discussing the matter of Reggie. So I think that in itself shows you that the three council people are out of touch with the rest of the residents in that city. And also, I was able, while I've been here, I was able also to monitor, some of the chatter that has been going on in some of the Brooklyn Center community discussion boards, and the reaction I'm seeing there is quite overwhelmingly against the action by the council. I think I'm froze again. I think Jonathan, you can just go ahead. Oh no, you're muted. Jonathan, you're muted.
We're seeing, I think, across the country, a lot of rising of racial tensions, and it's being stoked by the current administration in the White House and by pockets across the U.S. And when you see situations like this with no other explanation, when there's no details, when somebody's performance has been at the highest quality, it does raise that question. And people think, well, no, this couldn't be that way. They wouldn't just fire somebody because of racial dynamics or anything. And that's exactly what happens. It's one of the things that we've been trying to explain, and you're seeing a lot more of it going on, and more things. They did at the Smithsonian. They've gone through the museums and tried to curb back, the impact of the history, the cutting back of DEI at corporations, which are paying the price. Target is still doing horribly and struggling to come out of the boycott that's come from the fact that they cut back their DEI programs. And so there's pieces that are happening across the U.S. right now, and it ties into everything from health insurance to the unemployment. I mean, I think we hit the unemployment rate right now is like 4.6, and I think for Black people it's 8%. So it's higher, and it's impacting us. And meanwhile, the president is saying that no, there's no problem, there's no issues, and just keep on with the same kind of thing. So there's a lot going beneath the surface that is affecting us on an everyday life kind of piece. And so we've got to look at how are we going to respond to this? What is it going to take to get communities to move forward? And people are starting to do things. People are writing, people are reporting, people are bringing attention. I mean, that is so key right now, because a lot of times when you get to some of the mainstream media, you get things being censored or cut off. 60 Minutes just had a piece on Inside CCOT, that their new head, I think it's Barry Weiss, cut. Although it's streamed in Canada, which is interesting. And so clips have gone out because it wasn't friendly to the current administration. So we need media that is going to be out there like what both of you are leading, so that people can actually get the truth and understand what's going on in our world.
Tom, go ahead.
Very true. I mean, especially, these things, the mainstream media thing is something quite concerning. I know, for example, in Charlotte last week, as in the week before, we had to put out know your rights type of information, so people know what they need to do. But you're not going to find that in this mainstream media. Yes, they report more on immigration matters, for example, on what is happening with immigration, what is ICE is up to, and all that stuff. But you're not going to find anything about your rights. If these guys if these guys show up, this is what you need to do. But as we without shame or fear, we put that information, because it's a matter of life and death for a lot of immigrants at this point.
From your position now, where you are at home in Kenya, how does the outside world look at what's happening in this country, and how does it compare to experiences in Kenya in particular, but across Africa, as you are able to discern? And as I have this discussion with you, I'm looking at the stuff that I monitor. I monitor a lot of stuff in South Africa, for example, Ghana, Burkina Faso, other places. And, the criticism of South Africa is still one of, though it's a country that has a 3% white population, whites control the economy and the life of the entire nation. And so that arrangement between present leadership in the countries that have emerged from neo-colonialism, right? And from colonial restrictions, those relationships are being examined as to whether they are delivering this idea of freedom, of agency, of sovereignty for ordinary African people. So how does this discussion of us African Americans tie into that same analysis and discussion happening on the continent, particularly in South Africa, but maybe also in Kenya. I'm not sure.
Al, you're not
Yeah.
talking about, just to clarify, the persecuted white minority that the current administration is giving priority citizenship to. The ones who are just so persecuted over there. Is that those are the ones we're talking about?
Yeah, right, yeah.
There's that, yes, there's that as well. But this is the thing. I think the Trump and South Africa situation. If anybody was doubting, if anybody was not clear on what "Make America White Again" means, this is it. Okay, so the issue is about making America white again, because as you know, Trump has stopped all refugees from coming to the United States unless you are a white South African.
Mm.
Okay, so the numbers that I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know he lowered the numbers that are going to be admitted for 2026. The new year that we're getting into. So the new numbers that he has is going to allow to come in as refugees to the United States is lower than what Biden had, as he was exiting the White House. And the language, from what I understand, is written in such a way that it's only white South Africans that are going to get admitted, and nobody else from any part of the world. But of course, yes, if we have some white Europeans that want to emigrate, they will be allowed in, I'm sure. But there's nobody, beating their doors to leave, Norway or Sweden or any of those countries that Trump seems to love, seek emigrating to the U.S. But to your question, Al, about how the continent is viewing the latest, Trump 2.0. Trump 2.0, I think most people on the continent that I follow and who have been talking to, it's not a positive view, because Trump 2.0 started off very badly. In fact, it just started off with the berating of the president of South Africa when he came, not berating, but it was not a very welcoming type of a situation when the president came to the White House early this year. And what people need to understand, South Africa is like the most successful in terms of economy, GDP wise, and that kind of stuff. It's really the largest on the continent. I think on paper it's Nigeria, but in practical terms, in my view, South Africa is the top economy on the continent. And if you were to look, if you were to kind of separate the big divide between the very rich and the poor in South Africa, when you're in South Africa, you're basically it's a first world country, really, for the most part when you're there, and until you start seeing all the, the poverty in some of the shanty towns, for example, that still exist, but for the most, so now my thinking is that, okay, you have these wild black people, black South Africans that are in charge of the government, and Trump doesn't like them. Why doesn't he like them? Why doesn't he like black people that are running successful things? Yes, we have some challenges in South Africa, as I said, with the divide between rich and poor. But the people need to understand that there are other things at play, because Trump is not bothering. Is not bothering some other smaller African countries. Okay, is just very bothered by South Africa, because who is running South Africa? Okay, just like how he goes after certain people who are running, African Americans who are, black people who are running the military, black people who are running, who are in the Federal Reserve, all these important institutions in the country, where a black person might have any power. Trump does not want that person there. Okay, so that's how people have to look at what is going on in South Africa. Even the white South Africans back in South, I say there is no refugees in South Africa that deserve to be treated as refugees to come to the US. Okay, so there's no such thing. So people on the continent are not very happy with the Americans at the moment. Okay, two things. As you know, there's something called BRICS. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China. I forget what the S stands for. But these are the other powerful economies, emerging economies, in the global setup of things. And South Africa currently is the leader, is the chair for that group. And actually, the summit for BRICS was being held in South Africa last month or this month, and the US was supposed to be attending, but they did not attend. Okay, because of this stuff they're having with with the president, with the South African president at the moment. So these things, you just have to look at it from Trump's perspective of not giving much regard, not having much regard for black-led, what I might consider successful black-led organizations or any organization that is being led by a black person, and it's working as it should. Trump does not want anything to do with with that organization or with that person. So it's the same thing. Okay. And then also, the one last thing, there is something we call the diversity lottery, the visa lottery. There is something called the diversity lottery, which allows, some countries to, resident citizens of some countries to enter a lottery to get a green card to come to the United States. Now, the Trump administration, as of last week, they just used an excuse. Because of the Brown University killing, shooting, to say, hey, we're putting a pause on issuing visas to these folks. I mean, come on, man. This is just it's just an excuse. Stuff like that.
Tom, let me ask you: are you at all concerned about your movement? You are an American citizen, obviously, but you're at home now in Kenya. Do you have to make special preparations or considerations to ensure that you can move freely?
No, I don't. To be honest, sometimes my wife thinks I'm being silly by not, giving this thing serious thought. This is the thing, man. I became a citizen actually through that same program. As I came to the United States as an international student, as most Kenyans did in the. I came in 1990 as an international student. As I was finishing my university education, I ended up winning the lottery while there in the United States. I was trying to figure out what I should do. So that's how I got my citizenship. So I think I got it, through the proper way. I don't recall ever lying on anything because they are saying that, if you lied, if you made any statements or whatever to get your citizenship, that you're going to, they are going to denaturalize you. Okay, so that's the only way. If they go to the effort of trying to denaturalize people like me, then we will deal with that one in that comes. But in any case, the continent is a great place, to be honest, Al. If some crazy thing, stuff like that was to happen, I'll be quite happy here too. This is where I was born and raised.
You wouldn't feel you're being punished if you have to stay where your territory, right? Yeah.
In fact, if I'll only be fighting it, because I just think it's wrong. But it's not that that I don't have a place to go and that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Let me ask
We're
you,
fortunate
and
in
Jonathan,
that
you can
regard.
weigh in on this as well. I've been fascinated by watching the stories, and I've told you this before, Tom, about what's unfolding in Burkina Faso and the Sahelian region. The Sahelian states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, have formed an alliance that's economic, that's political, that is projecting a move towards what they have described as integration, the object of which is that Africa itself, some 54 countries, at some point in time will evolve into a single body that is continent wide. That's an aspiration. It's kind of the vision of Pan-Africanism. Is that real? And how do the young people, particularly even in Kenya or across the continent, resonate with the media? I think the Traore team is prodigious in generating AI and social media and news that is really inspirational. But the question is it real? What is the sense on the ground there, Tom? And Jonathan, if you've watched anything about this, what are your thoughts? Tom, you first.
No, the Traore effect is real. Right now, in many of these countries, when you go, and as you know, back in June, I think I was in Liberia. I was in Liberia, and even as I was transiting through Ghana and then back to Kenya, the Traore effect is there. You can hear it in conversations people are making. People are making conversations. Oh my God, man! Yeah, somebody who has the guts to finally tell the French. Usually this thing is about the French a lot of times, because the French, the way they handled their French colonies post independence has just been horrible. For lack of a better word, just horrible, just totally horrible. So they have really emasculated those economies. So to see someone like Traore come and inspire people and say, no, tell the French, no, you gotta leave, and they left. You go to all these African countries now, you will hear, oh man, so our president is messing up. We need a Traore over here. Okay, so that's what you keep hearing. And if you I haven't spent any time in Nairobi, but I know in Nairobi, for example, we have these public transportation vehicles private transportation vehicles that usually are a work of art. So the moving vehicles normally have a lot of political messaging on them. So Traore is one of the most popular ones, painted on these public transportation vehicles, minibuses usually. So you see the images of Traore. I think I'll find one for you to just send to you, so you can take a look at it. So he's an inspiration to many people. Okay, which to some of us, with these things should not be like this. We just want people. If you somehow you end up leading a country, whether you were elected or you imposed yourself on them, as is the case in many African countries. Some are elected, but a good number are imposed leaders. They are not, they do not really reflect the popular will of the people anyway. So in any, what we want is people who can actually fight for the resources of Africa, make sure that Africa is paid fairly for its materials, its raw materials, and anything that it's selling to anyone. We just want a fair price, okay? And people like Traore are trying to force that conversation, and especially if you have the leverage in terms of whether it's minerals and whatever that you can fight back. And this is actually related, by the way, how to the situation in South Africa. Okay, South Africa, one of those countries that have those kinds of resources. Okay, diamonds, gold, and whatever else you have in this world, they have over there. So when you see a competent, yes, the South African government administration has, there's some criticism you can direct it their way, but you can't necessarily say that they are not good stewards of that country's resources. Okay, it's just how they manage them. Sometimes we can have some, opinion or differences of opinion on, but that's seeing a competent African government is not what people like Trump want to see, no matter what they say. Okay, so these things are normally related. You have in Cameroon, somebody has ruled for, I think, 60 years or whatever. That man, Paul Biya, has been there forever, very frail, can't even walk by himself, So Traore is an inspiration to many, many people. But make sure when you look at the situation in Burkina Faso, you also look at South Africa to see how are these two things connected. Even in Traore, there are always allegations that there's always a bounty on his head, by certain powerful nations.
Jonathan, I'll turn to you to talk about what we've described in the past as this awareness that is being labeled as Afrofuturism. And part of our genius and creativity is to imagine alternate scenarios. What if we hadn't been experiencing what we experienced as Africa for the past 500 years, the rise of Europe and even Asians or Arabs in domination over the African land and also over African bodies, the transatlantic and the Eastern slave trade as well, then colonialism after the slave trade waned, and neo-colonialism, the movement of European direct control over African cultures, but through the agents of the so-called freed African colonies. So with that as a scenario, there's a dreaming, a thinking, and imagining that comes from a sense of antiquity, but also just imagination and cultural, flavor, but also a projection of what could be and what should be. And how do you tie the reality of our experience to the visions that are coming out of our creative places in the world as you see it? Is that a fair question, Jonathan, first of all?
Oh, yeah, it's a fair question. I want to add another interesting layer to this, which is what's been happening with the ambassadors and the relations. I had a good friend from college, Spelmanite, whose husband was ambassador to Mozambique, and he got moved out of that position shortly after Trump took office and transferred over to Germany. And now Trump just recalled 30 U.S. ambassadors, and 13 of them were from Africa. And so you're seeing this shift of moving away from positive relations or the people who can facilitate those relations. And I think you see a level of the administration looking towards those countries that have resources they can exploit. And that ties into the pieces of Afrofuturism, in that a lot of Afrofuturism, when it talks about what can be and what has been, the backdrop is countries that have been able to utilize their resources and utilize their intellectual capital and move that forward. Ytasha Womack is one of great authors that does that, also from an HBCU. Walter Greason is one we'll get on here on the show at some point. But looking at Afrofuturism, talking about that vision of what life could be like for those of us who are descendants of Africa, African American, what have you. It represents the vision of our lives that could have been if it had not been derailed by the transatlantic slave trade, and then what may be for the future, even picking up the pieces from this. It shows how the unfettered intellect that comes within the Black and brown communities goes ahead and creates so much. You look at the things that have come out of the Black communities, there is so much creativity, there is so much invention and ideas that have gone ahead and pulled some pieces together. We just had a screening of a documentary about Thermo King. And Thermo King had, as its founders, one of its founders was African American gentleman, Frederick McKinley Jones, from the Rondo community, and Thermo King. He invented, essentially the refrigerated truck and
Right.
the air conditioning units for the battlefields out in, I think it was World War II, and being able to help get, needed medical supplies that had to be kept cold. There's so many things like this that are little pieces of history that we don't know about and we don't see, and they're all around us. Thermo King is all over the world in terms of the refrigerated truck units and the refrigeration units and other transport railway cars and things like that. So Afrofuturism presents that kind of idea of where we could be, where we should be, and a possibility for blueprints of the future. But the challenge is dealing with the colonialism that exists both on the African continent and in U.S. as remnants of that, and as the impact and ideas are here. We have somebody trying to be a dictator in the White House, and you put that against many of the African countries that end up with that kind of situation and the exploitation that happens of the people. And you're going to end up at some point, if there isn't significant change, with some sort of revolution or some sort of upheaval that is going to shift significantly the balance of power. And so there's a lot of tension right now as we end the year and seeing what 2026 may yet bring.
Tom,
Yeah, and actually,
go ahead.
I was going to go a quick one, since Jonathan just mentioned about the issues with the ambassadors. The other thing that has really affected the Black community, is the firings of federal employees, earlier in this second Trump administration. As you know, a lot of the Black middle class, a lot of it came through the federal government. That's kind of where a lot of people built their wealth from, So these things have some very serious effects on.
I think the number is 300,000 Black women lost their jobs under the Trump administration, and that's pretty much in the federal pipeline. So that's a huge displacement of wealth and wealth building capacity in the Black community.
It's super crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the assault of Black.
Yeah. So Tom, then, am I right in describing the thought that Traore's vision for integrated Africa is taking root? And to hear him talk about integration is way different from what I grew up thinking integration was. I grew up here in the U.S. thinking integration is Black people and white people being integrated. But for the first time, when I listened to Captain Traore talk about integration within the context of the African continent, he talked about removing artificial geographic borders and systems that support that have nothing to do with the reality of opportunity for the indigenous people of the continent. Is that taking root? I mean, Kwame Nkrumah talked about it. Abdel Nasser, Patrice Lumumba. It's not a new idea, but how does it look right now?
Yeah, I think I will not say that it's taking root, but there are important steps happening to get us to that integration that Traore is talking about. And one of the things people have been fighting about is we've been trying to do is to make it as easy as possible for Africans to move across these artificial borders that were set up during colonial times as easy as possible. Can you imagine, we still have instances where, if you want to go from one African country to another, sometimes it's much cheaper to just go through Europe and then come back down, which is, it sounds crazy. We want to make that the exception rather than the normal thing to do. Okay, so I think there are some African countries that are very serious in trying to make it as easy as possible, but that also has to be followed up with the necessary infrastructure to make it possible. Because like right now, flying within the African continent is damn expensive. Just going from Nairobi to Lagos or Lagos to Johannesburg and vice versa is just super crazy. But the quick border crossing between neighboring African countries,
Mhm.
that actually is really happening.
Okay.
Because it's very easy to move, like within the West African countries. It's easy to move, at least we on road and something, even with air to some extent where available. But it's the movement across the entire continent that is really still proving to be quite challenging.
We're out of time. Tom Gitahi joined from Mombasa, Kenya, editor Jonathan Palmer, executive director of the Rondo Center for Diverse Expressions. Brothers, thank you so much. I'm Al McFarland. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.